You know why I really love Nick Hood as a minister? I watched his father do it, and he took over for the church, and he was one of us, but he really turned out to be a great minister. I know it's hard, and that's something that I know that all ministers may not be doing what they're doing because for the right reasons, but I know it's hard. I know he's a beautiful man, and we've been knowing each other for over 50 years. I believe in him. He's inspired me in so many ways to do what I'm doing and try to be the best at it. Make sure you watch Nick Hood's Ministries. You'll never be the same.
Hello, this is Pastor Nick Hood. Welcome to the Nick Hood Ministries show. I'm pastor of the Plymouth United Church of Christ, located in the heart of Detroit, the very tip-top, the medical center area of Detroit. And today I want to talk about Lydia from Acts chapter 16 as an example of a self-secure, spiritual woman. I'll be talking with Reverend David Nunn Telford. We'll be back in just a moment.
This is a new ministry which is just starting. Reverend Hood needs your help in sharing the good news of Jesus Christ and His power throughout the world. If you would be so kind as to send a donation to Nicholas Hood III Ministries of any amount, Reverend Hood will send you a free complimentary copy of his book of original personal prayers and beautiful photographs entitled The Test, The Strength, The Endurance, and The Way Out. We appreciate your support, and in this way, you can partner with Reverend Hood in sharing the good news of Jesus throughout the world. Please make your check out to Nicholas Hood III Ministries and mail it to 4535 Chrysler Drive, Detroit, Michigan, 48201.
Again, I'm Pastor Nick Hood, and with me today is the Reverend David Nunn Telford, and we're talking about Lydia from Acts chapter 16 as an example of a self-secured spiritual woman. And Reverend Telford, I've enjoyed so much the last 4 weeks you've been on this program, and it's been an absolute spiritual delight to hear your perspective. Reverend David Nunn Telford is a relatively recent graduate of the Yale Divinity School. He's only 32 years of age, and it's just so refreshing to hear your perspective. And today I want to talk about Lydia. There may be people looking at the program today who are not that familiar with Lydia in the Bible, but if you read in the excursions, the pastoral ministry, the missionary trips of the Apostle Paul, one of the places he goes to in Acts chapter 16 is the city of Philippi. And Philippi is in modern-day Greece. In the time of Paul, many refer to it as Asia Minor. Paul and Silas are in Philippi to create a church. And they don't know where to start, so they start at the river. They go to the river on the Sabbath because, as the Bible tells us, they suppose that there were people, spiritual seekers, there by the river. And, I don't know if these were Jewish people. I assume they were already Jewish, but they were spiritually inclined people praying at the river. And while Paul is preaching, I can just imagine him, Reverend David, I can imagine Paul himself maybe getting into the river. I've been to that river. I've been in that little river. And it has a faster current than you might imagine for a small little stream. But I can imagine Paul himself maybe going into the river, extending his hands to those women on the shore, saying, come ye that love the Lord. You think you know God, but until you meet the Lord Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, and let Him wash you on the inside. You're here at the river where people wash themselves on the outside. but I want you to accept the salvation that only Jesus Christ can give, and who can give you this abundance of life. And for Lydia to, receive that invitation of Paul, and she comes down in the river, and the Bible tells us she and her household were baptized. And then after they're baptized in the river, and think about what it means to be baptized. There's a degree of vulnerability in baptism. I baptized, I don't know if you know this, but in the Detroit River for the last 25 or so years.
Really?
In August. And I'm debating whether or not I'm going to do it this year. We're out of the pandemic. But I literally walk in the water and I extend the invitation to people. They know I'm going to be baptized on that day. But that's an amazing experience, to take somebody under the water and then you bring them back up. I'll tell you a funny story about it, then we'll get back to Lydia. A few years ago, performing a baptism in the Detroit River, I baptized about 10 people that year. And we were ready to say the final prayer and then walk back out of the river, back to the shore. And a young man is running out to the river. He has the robe in his hand. We gave everybody a white robe. He has the robe in his hand, and he's moving as fast as he can to get out to where I am. He says, don't stop, don't stop. I want to be baptized. I want to be baptized. And I looked at the guy, and it was kind of funny because I knew him I knew the guy. And he had a background in martial arts. He's like a kickboxing, kind of guy.
Right.
And he's running out, and I'm saying to myself, far be it from me to tell this kickboxer that I can't baptize him.
Right.
I said, we're going to have another baptism today.
Right, there's one more.
And the funny thing about it, now I remember, it must have been in 2008, because I had had shoulder surgery earlier in that year, a torn, whatever they call it. It's the biceps. And but there's another word for it, this muscle, that tendon that from the shoulder to the elbow. And I couldn't put my right hand on a person's head the way I normally would. So I told the guy, I said, come out. And so that year, I had an older minister, Reverend Brown, on the left. I had a younger minister, Reverend Georgia Hill, on the right. She was my associate minister. And because I couldn't push the guy down the way I normally would. And so, when I go through the questions, do you believe in Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior? Do you believe in the Father, the Son, the Holy Ghost? Do you renounce all sin, give your life to Jesus Christ? And do you desire to be baptized? And the guy said affirmatively to everything. I put my hand on his forehead to take him down in the water. We're going back and back and back. And something happened because I couldn't put my right hand, I'm putting my left hand. And Reverend Hill had just gotten her hair done because she was going to be preaching that night somewhere else. And as it turned out, I brought not only that guy, but Reverend Hill down into the water.
Oh my goodness.
All three of us went in the water. And I fell out laughing. I said, nothing like a river baptism.
Right.
And I'm just glad we didn't get floated away. But anyway, that's enough for the personal anecdotes about baptism in the river. But Reverend David Nunn Telford, give me your thoughts about the baptism of Lydia.
Yeah, I don't want to rush past the fact that it happened in the Detroit River too quickly. Because when I was baptized, for those of you at home, I'm from Brooklyn, New York, and I was baptized in a YMCA in Sunset Park in Brooklyn, New York. And the reason why I think that's important to state is because of the theological importance of baptism.
Absolutely.
Right? Because ritual cleansing used to happen as folks were going into the temple, right? Before you went into worship, you had to cleanse yourself and wash yourself before you went in to pray and commune with
Matter of
God.
fact, it still does to some extent, in the Jewish community.
Absolutely.
I forget the name of it, but there's a bath for the men and bath for the women.
Right. One of the things that, in addition to that baptism kind of gives us is an opportunity for us to experience this internal cleansing. But what I love about it is that the locale doesn't have to be stationary at the church, right? It can be anywhere. It could be at the YMCA, it could be at the Detroit River. God can meet you anywhere. And I think that this story for us to focus on Lydia is so amazing, because that understanding that God can meet us anywhere, that God can meet us in our situation, meet us in our lives, wherever we may be. I think it's amazing that Lydia is the person that hears and internalizes that message and wants to be baptized. Lydia, who is a bad sister. Like, I love this story because Lydia has it going on. Business person, well known in the community, has influence, head of her household. I mean, y'all, for the text to refer to Lydia and Lydia's household is such a big deal, because it's very rare in these ancient texts that a woman would be so prominently positioned as the person who is leading her household. So Lydia is used to being in charge. And so someone who's a business person, used to being in charge, who's able to take a step back and say, hey, I may be in control in 95% of my life, but there are places and there are moments where I can't be in control, where things are out of my control. And I'm going to be vulnerable, like you said, enough to pause and to put myself in a position to receive God's grace. That is amazing to me, and I think it's something that speaks to us today.
A couple of weeks ago, we were talking about the parable of the Good Samaritan, and you spoke on the courage to cross the road. I look at Lydia, crossing the road. The Good Samaritan had courage to cross the road to help the injured man. I look at Lydia as an example of a person who, she didn't cross the road, she stepped into the river. And in a sense, that's like crossing a road. And if we are to develop in faith, at some point, we have to step into the river. At some point, we have to make ourselves vulnerable to the Lord. And in the process of making ourselves vulnerable to the Lord, we open ourselves so we can receive the Lord. And I'm impressed with Lydia because as a business person, some people think of business people as being conservative. Other people look at them as being really bold. The truth of the matter is the good business person is both. They're conservative in that they want to make sure that if they make an investment in something, that it more than likely will turn out well. But the bold part of it is once they get to the point of making an investment, they end up spending often much more money than a normal person would spend. And in the case of Lydia, with that mindset, where the Bible tells us she was a seller of purple, that means she understands product, she understands merchandising, she understands warehousing, she understands marketing, she understands all the vicissitudes of business. And for all of that, and all of that mindset, we see her at a little river, and it is a little river in Philippi, where Paul and Silas are in the water, and Lydia is willing to step right in. And to me, that is the most amazing thing. And I can imagine the other women on the seashore or the banks of the river looking at Lydia and saying, well, isn't that the astute business person? Isn't that the person with money? But look at her now. She's not only in the water, but Paul is taking her back in the water. The water is over her face and over her hair. And, you know, she's got probably pretty nappy hair. You know, yes, I said it. Lydia probably had nappy hair. But here she is. She's getting her hair messed up.
Right.
And, but she's getting her hair messed up for the Lord. And so, my friends, we got to stop for right now. But we'll be back in a minute, and we're going to talk a little bit more about Lydia. Stay tuned.
This is a new ministry which is just starting. Reverend Hood needs your help in sharing the good news of Jesus Christ and his power throughout the world. If you would be so kind as to send a donation to Nicholas Hood III Ministries of any amount, Reverend Hood will send you a free complimentary copy of his book of original personal prayers and beautiful photographs entitled The Test, The Strength, The Endurance, and The Way Out. We appreciate your support, and in this way, you can partner with Reverend Hood in sharing the good news of Jesus throughout the world. Please make your check out to Nicholas Hood III Ministries and mail it to 4535 Chrysler Drive, Detroit, Michigan, 48201.
There are people all across this globe who now will have the opportunity to know you like I do, because of course you are very forthcoming in telling stories about life, stories that are relatable, and that means something. How wonderful it is, and I just look forward to seeing how this platform, this new platform, will just rise and grow and really be a vessel through which you can be a blessing to folk all over this world, and Lord knows we need it.
Again, I'm Nick Hood, pastor of the Plymouth United Church of Christ in Detroit. This is a new ministry, a new broadcast ministry that I felt compelled to do for probably 45 years. And I just couldn't do it because, you know, I was consumed with the church, consumed with politics. I was on the Detroit City Council for a number of years, and it just didn't seem like the right time. But I'm doing this now, and I really appreciate and I'm humbled that you have taken the time to look at this program. And I want you to pray with me, pray for me, and I want you to know I'm praying for you. Today, we're talking about Lydia. I'm with the Reverend David Nunn Telford, and he's a young scholar from the Yale Divinity School. And Reverend Nunn Telford, we ended the earlier portion of this program talking about Lydia. Give me some more of your thoughts about what is the significance of Lydia being compelled to take her entire household into the river to be baptized.
It's a big deal. It's a big deal. You know, one of the things that we, have to remember is a lot of these households were structured back then as they are now. It's everyone's looking up to the leader of the household, and in this instance, it is Lydia. And it says something so profound about the spiritual awakening that's happening in Lydia's life, that Lydia says, not only am I going to be vulnerable to the community around me, I'm also going to be vulnerable to my family. I'm going to be vulnerable to those who are around me, and not only show them that I know what it's like to put my hands and my life in God's hands, but I'm going to invite them to do the same. I think that is one of the most profound things that any of us can do, especially those of us who are in family systems where we are a leader. What does it mean for us to not only ourselves go through our own spiritual awakenings, but to invite those who are around us to do the same? I think it speaks volumes about who Lydia is, what Lydia has experienced, but I am 100% fascinated as well about what this means for her family and household.
Lydia, after being baptized, when she comes up out of the water, then she says to Paul, if you have found me faithful to the Lord, I implore upon you to stay at my house. And she's talking about Paul and Silas. Stay at my house, essentially, while you build a church in Philippi. And what does that say to you? that she's not only led her house into the water, but now she's inviting the guys who invited her into the water to come out of the water and come stay at her house.
Yeah, it's a big deal because, you know, I don't know if us as modern readers take enough stock of the fact that what Paul and Silas are building is not been established yet. I mean, I know that we have the idea now of people who plant churches, but they're planting churches in a community where there probably are other churches, right? You know,
Absolutely.
You don't know,
Absolutely.
but they are starting from scratch in a community where they are spreading the gospel and building a brand new thing. It is a new movement that they are establishing. And so for Lydia to come out of the water and say, not only am I going to put myself in a position where I'm vulnerable, not only am I going to invite my family into this, but I believe so much in this that I am going to take a leap of faith and give of my own resources, right? I mean, she's inviting people into her home. That takes time, that takes resources. I'm going to put my resources into this unproven thing, but it's her love of God, right? It's her love of the community that allows her to do it. So it's completely incredible.
Reverend, we spoke earlier about the vulnerability of baptism. There's also vulnerability in inviting somebody into your house. Because think about what people see. They see how you live. I was sharing with my church a few weeks ago in a sermon. I was talking about inviting people into your house. And when you invite a person into your house, I saw a report on NBC many years ago where they were talking about what's the most private space in your house. And it has been a few years since I saw this, but what they said was, at that time, some research showed that the most private place in the house is your library. The books that you have on a shelf. Because what does that indicate? It lets the person who you've let into your house know what you've been reading, what you've been thinking about. And I was sharing with them, I said, yeah, if you come into my house, we've got the stated library, but we got one other room with a whole wall full of, college books from my wife and from myself. Then we have another set of books in the hallway, a corridor full of my cookbooks. I'm a belated cook, but if a person came into my house, that's what they would learn. And in Lydia's case, she's allowing the Apostle Paul and Silas to see how she lives. And I think that is an extreme degree of vulnerability. My church is, and really myself, I've been talking with some people, Christians in Ghana, about a partnership between our churches. And so I've been to Ghana a couple times for that express purpose, to talk with them about that. And, I've stayed in houses. I stayed in a house the last time I was there. The house of the treasurer of the church.
Wow.
And for those of us in America, we may have all kind of ideas about, would I stay at a house in Africa? And what do the houses in Africa really look like? But what I found was that particular house that I stayed in had running water. They had hot water, a hot water tank dedicated, to the bathroom that I was assigned to use. And they had air conditioning. And I said, look, they have air conditioning when I don't have air conditioning at my home. And they're in Ghana. And the point being that it opened my eyes, and it will open your eyes in a totally different way when you come to live with somebody as opposed to not. And Lydia is comfortable enough and secure enough in her own lifestyle to invite Paul and Silas into her home. And to me, that says an awful lot about her strength of character.
Absolutely. You know, there's an intimacy there, right?
Yes.
And there's intimacy that she's allowing that I'm sure there are other areas of her life where perhaps as a woman in a male-dominated society, she's not allowed to show that side of herself, right? As a business person, as a leader in the community, maybe she doesn't have that luxury, but she believes in this effort so much and believes in the message of the gospel so much that she's willing to do so. So yeah, no, Lydia shows us all what it means to strip down and to show ourselves, our most vulnerable selves, for the advancement of the gospel.
So tell me this, we only have a couple minutes left, but where do you think this sense of self-security comes from for Lydia? Do you think that's from her experience as a business person? Do you think it's innate? Where does that come from?
Yeah, it's a great question. You know, it's really hard to say. You know, I don't know that the text itself, gives us an answer. But if I were to, put my imagination hat on, I think that there are a set of experiences that Lydia goes through where Lydia learns that she can be highly successful and confident in the work that she does. And there's something about that success that allows her to open herself up in other areas of her life. So I think that it's some of that success in the business space that allows her to maybe open up in some other areas.
For the person looking at this today, I want you to pray for a sense of self-security. I don't know if there's somebody looking at this right now who's looking at this and saying, yeah, that's all well and good. Lydia was secure enough to go into the river and be baptized. Lydia was secure enough to sell purple, but I don't feel particularly secure. And I want you to know, when you give your life to Jesus Christ, the Lord will make you feel better about yourself. You may be sick, but the Lord will make you feel better. You may be poor, but the Lord will show you how to feel better about yourself. The Lord will show you a way to live the best life possible. Reverend David Nunn Telford, we're about out of time. But again, I want to thank you so much for being with me today.
Thank you for having me.
I want to thank you for being with me the last 4 weeks.
Absolutely, it's been a blast.
Yeah, and we've been speaking to people not only throughout the United States, but throughout the whole world. This is the Word Network. And so I thank you. And to those who have looked at this today, God bless, God keep you. Remember, I am praying for you.
This is a new ministry which is just starting. Reverend Hood needs your help in sharing the good news of Jesus Christ and his power throughout the world. If you would be so kind as to send a donation to Nicholas Hood III Ministries of any amount, Reverend Hood will send you a free complimentary copy of his book of original personal prayers and beautiful photographs entitled The Test, The Strength, The Endurance, and The Way Out.